Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, business continuity, emergency management, crisis management, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Longtime listeners and viewers, you'll know that recently my colleague and I, James Green, we did a live broadcast from the DRJ Fall 2023 conference in Phoenix. And we had a lot of great speakers stop by and share some insights with us during that broadcast. And today, I'm lucky enough to have one of those speakers come and talk to us and do a full episode. Her session was Components of a Resilience Program, and I'd like to welcome to the show Carol Paasch. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
It's great to see you again, and I know before we started chatting, you had a great time at DRJ. So did we.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I always love enjoying getting connected with my network again and finding out how I can learn or how I can figure out how to mentor.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you could make it today and accepted the invitation to come on. Now, I know you and I have chatted back and forth, and we chatted in Phoenix, but could you take a minute to introduce yourself, what you do, and how you got into what you do?
You bet. My career is 40 years old now. The
Young.
career.
40 years young.
40 years young, my career. And it started out with COBOL programming, and I was the weird geek that loved to talk to people and figure out what was really broken. How could I make their lives better and easier? Because that's what computers were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So I got pushed out into getting the business analysis and getting what the problem is and converting it into geek speak. That landed me a project management team lead and a little project called Y2K. I was handed that on February of 1999, and my end date was not going to change. So we really got going on it. Part of that was business continuity, disaster recovery, and explaining to them that even if there's something wrong with the computers, we restored another site, it's still going to be broken. So it was good, and that's what started my business continuity journey. And so I've been business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management since 2000. I've been a team of one most of the time. The last 3 years, I've been blessed with getting one of our call center personnel over onto our team, and I taught her business continuity and disaster recovery. And then I was able to get another gal over from the service desk, and she's been hitting the ground running as well. So I've got a team now. So that's been kind of fun. But
well, great. I'm glad that you came back and talked to us today. I'm really interested to hear, after 40 years young, of a career, your viewpoints on some of these components that you talked about at DRJ. So let's start going down our list, because we have 14 things to cover. I don't know if we'll get to all 14, but let's start with the first one on the list, and one of the most obvious: executive sponsor.
It's your foundation. Don't try and manage from the ground up. It doesn't work. You have to get an executive that understands the value of a program. They will also be your guide into the chief officer level, your executive level. If you don't have that sponsorship, you're just going to be beating your head up against the wall. You'll need a policy, but the executive sponsorship really sets the whole program, because you understand what the goals are. What is he or she after? What kind of concerns that they hear from the executives or the board? Where's our pain points, our choke points? You've got to interview them and say, what's going on? Don't assume anything. Talk to people.
Well, see, we're off script already. One question, and we're already going off script. You mentioned during your introduction you've been a team of one. So how do you go about getting executive sponsorship if you're the only one who really understands business continuity or resilience and what needs to be done? How do you go about? Do you send emails? Do you knock on doors? What do you do?
Well, first off, I go to the person that opened up the position. Who got the approval to get this position? Look at the job description. How far up does it go that we got this description or this position? And then where that stops or where you go, you interview them and say, why do you need this position? Let's put together some goals. Let's figure out what our first point is going to be. What other can we get a steering committee together? It's interviewing that person and going up as far in the organization as you could possibly get.
That's some good advice because I know there are so many who still struggle with trying to find a sponsor, and the message that comes across all the time is find a sponsor, find a sponsor. But what doesn't get said is how. And you just provided a lot of interesting, especially the person that posted the job. Start
Yep.
there.
Who's paying you? Who's signing the paycheck? Who's keeping you employed?
Yeah. And then approaching them. Why do you need me? Why do you need this? What are you seeing?
Right.
Perfect. I'm really glad you gave that advice because that's been missing in a lot of conversations lately that I'm hearing. So
that's too bad.
So let's jump to actually something. We'll go to the second one on the list because you just mentioned it, actually, a steering committee.
Yeah. Once you've got your executive sponsor, find out who are their buddies. Who's going to help support? Who do we need on the steering committee to help identify, okay, here's a broader definition of the program. What are we going to do to prioritize? If we find some problems, who do I bring those to? The executive sponsor is, I apologize, the best thing about being remote. We got puppy dogs all over the place. But the steering committee needs to be the person or people that if you're having problems getting traction, or if you're seeing that there's a place that we need to focus to get better, the steering committee is that committee that's got that power, because they're going to oversee all the people that you're supposed to be working with to get that back. So if you're having a problem and you escalate it and it comes back down saying, no, they need to work on this. Okay, document it and then say, when can I come back and get in so that we can keep moving forward? And that turns into your status reports and your metrics. It slowly just organically develops.
Now, you also talked about roles and responsibilities on the steering committee. How do you go about establishing that? Because if the steering committee is full of decision makers and top level people, everybody wants to be in charge. So how do you go about establishing roles and responsibilities that will work?
You bet. Well, my executive sponsor happens to be my chief information officer. So he is the chair of the steering committee. But the steering committee does work together. They all know what they're here for. They're representing their part of the organization. So it's not doing any other new roles and responsibilities. They're bringing their expertise of their part of the company to the table, and we make decisions as a company on what's the next step for this program. Where do we accept the risk? Where do we mitigate the risk? Where do we throw some money at it if it's going to impact the business enough? So as basically, you just need to have your chair, which in most cases, is your executive sponsor. And then get the rest of that C-suite at the table so that they're plugged in.
I was just going to ask that. Who should be at the table? Because I have been in places, and I'm sure you've seen it too or heard about it, that every department wants to be represented. But if you've got 40 departments, you can't have a steering committee with 40 people. But if you've got 10 departments in finance represented by one person, okay, that's more doable. So how big should a good steering committee be?
Well, and what you're explaining, I feel are subcomponents of the program. Your C-suite, however big it is, I still have pull into legal. They're CC'd on stuff. You include everybody, and if you use your C-suite, no matter how broad, that's where you need to go. And if they don't know why they're there, do one-on-ones with them, explain to them so that they don't look stupid in front of their colleagues. And say, this is what I need from you. You need to represent your entire tree of the organization. Because if you don't, you're not going to get the benefit of this program.
Right.
And it's always what's in it for me.
Yeah.
You've got to find out what's that key spot that you can help them with your program. Now, when you said, and you go down a little bit further, if you've got a large company that you have several departments within finance, you gave an example, I would maybe do that just as a side, but again, as high as you can to explain what's going on. And then you start doing some training and you pick out planners to start working on things. And especially on the IT side, you've got to, that's a tricky road. On the IT side, you've got to get the buy-in as well and training.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's always fun on the IT side when you start talking about resilience and all this and that. Oh, we got backups. It's like, no, more than that. It's more than that.
Yeah, and they said, oh, we got HA, we're okay. And I was like, okay. And your plans look like they're just smoking whole
Yeah.
scenarios. Like, what happens if I go in and unplug a random wire? For some reason, I lost access to the data center. But that's the kind of stuff. It's not the scenario. People get so hung up on the scenario. It's a what if. What if this doesn't work? What are you going to do? Yeah. How many people are going to come at you? What's your recovery time objective? What are they expecting for it to come back up? What's your notification? How are you going to get updates up to the people instead of them banging on your door and ringing your phone off the hook? How are you going to get that done?
Yeah.
And
I think that goes back to when this whole resilience business continuity industry started. It was built on fires, floods. So it's kind of been ingrained into people's heads over the years that everything is scenario based. And it doesn't matter. You can have a fire, flood, earthquake, or whatever. Your facility can still be unavailable. So now what do you do?
Right.
And getting your steering committee to understand that too, because I've been on steering committees where all they talk about is, do we have a plan for a fire? Do we have a plan for a flood? And it's like, how many plans do you guys need?
And that's what I explained to him. I was like, I don't want to have to go to this large shelf and say, oh yeah, we're having a fire. I need to pull that one down.
Yeah.
Oh, we're having a flood. I need to pull that one down. It doesn't matter. What are you going to do if you lose a particular application? What are you going to do if you lose a third-party vendor? What about key resources? Primary sites? Just look at the things that make your department work. What are your responses and how are you going to handle it if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
I don't care why it's not working. We'll figure that out later. You've done your notifications. Now, what are you going to do? Sitting and twiddling your thumbs is not the answer.
Or trying to figure it out then is not the answer either.
Correct. Correct.
On that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We're talking with Carol Paasch today about components of your resilience program, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.